Okay, so today we'll take a break from Tanya. We're going to do something on Tisha B'Av. Just a little bit of introduction. So we know that Tisha B'Av has two almost opposite themes running with it at the same time. On the surface, in a revealed way, in a conscious way, Tisha B'Av is a day of mourning. It's a day of pain. It's a day of remembering the Churban. That's the halachic way of observing Tisha B'Av, which comes with all the restrictions of fasting and not doing all the things you're not allowed to do on Yom Kippur. The 5 afflictions, as we call it, not wearing shoes, and so on and so forth. Sitting on a low stool. Kinus, we read Echo, which is a very sad part of Tanakh. And we read Kinus in the morning, which means we... I don't know how you can translate Kinus, but they're very sad paragraphs of describing the destruction, the Churban, and so on. Nowadays it's common, like we do, to intersperse them with lots of explanations and things like that, because it can get, it's very difficult language and it can get, drag on a bit. Incidentally, I should just insert here, on Sunday morning, I'll send it out on the WhatsApp, we're going to do what we always do, have a minyan. We're actually doing it at Yeshiva this year, because we're still in the middle of the Churban here. But we're going to do what we did last year, and the explanations and things that I did in the morning davening throughout the Kinnis, me and Rabbi Levi, we'll do on Zoom as well. So you can, if you're at home and you're in the mood, you can click in, tune in. On the other hand, we know about Tisha B'Av, there's also this underlying positivity in a very strange way. In Eicha, there's a reference to Tisha B'Av, and it says, Kara Olai Moyed, that Hashem designated, or the day of Tisha B'Av, as a Moyed. Moyed means a Yontif. That's what the Chagim are called. They're called Moadim L'Simcha, right? So it says Moyed, it's a Yontif, which is the reason halachically why on Tisha B'Av of all days we don't say Tachnun, which is a thing you normally skip out when it's a happy day, right? We also know that the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash actually took place on Tisha B'Av afternoon. You know that? Yeah, that's why the halacha is that the laws of the 9 days, which we're currently in, need actually be extended till the 10th of Av midday. It's like the laundry we're not supposed to do and things like that. It actually continues on till Monday afternoon, midday, right? Not drinking meat, not eating meat, not drinking wine, all that. That extends. Why? Because actually we are taught that the Beis Hamikdash, although we say it was destroyed on Tisha B'Av, it was set alight on Tisha B'Av afternoon, but actually burnt mainly on the 10th of Av. Okay, and the Gemara discusses, if that's the case, why was it made Tisha B'Av, why not 10th of Av? Because it says the beginning of the pain is the hardest, like setting it alight was like, that was the hardest part. Okay. And yet we find a very fascinating thing. We find that on Tisha B'Av afternoon, not many of them, but some laws of mourning are relaxed, which is almost counterintuitive. Like, for example, in a shul, we take off the curtain of the Aron Kodesh by night and by day in the morning. For Mincha, we put it back. We don't wear tefillin in the morning, we wear tefillin in the afternoon. We sit in a low stool on Tisha B'Av only until midday. From midday, you can sit on a regular chair. You're not supposed to do business on Tisha B'Av if you can help it, but if you need to do it, after midday. Normally in most communities, I think Krinsky also, if I'm not mistaken, people need to buy things for the end of the fast. Normally the stores open up on midday. They don't open up in the morning. That's the way it's supposed to be done, right? After midday. It says even if you're preparing a meal, it says the people preparing a meal for Matzah Tisha B'Av, you should try and do it only in the afternoon. House cleaning, that kind of thing, only in the afternoon. Otherwise, all the other laws Tisha B'Av continue on a whole day, but there is a difference between before morning and midday. Why? So there's a fascinating chazal that on the afternoon of Tisha B'Av, some of the hidden part of Tisha B'Av, the Yontif of Tisha B'Av, the Geula of Tisha B'Av, comes out. Fascinating Chazal. I think it's at Talmud Yerushalmi, if I'm not mistaken. Going back to the story of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, which tell quickly the story just to give a context. So we know that before the Churban, there was a really terrible thing going on in Yerushalayim. The Romans had laid siege around Yerushalayim, led by the general Vespasian, Aspasionis, who later became the emperor. There was a tremendous fight between the Chachamim, the great sages of the Sanhedrin, who saw with Ruach HaKodesh that they must not upset the whole thing, they must not fight back. It's doomed. In other words, Yerushalayim will fall. Fighting back and rebelling will just make it worse. But then there was a bunch of young zealots, it says in the Gemara, calls it biryonim, like troublemakers, rebels, whatever. They took over Yerushalayim and they wanted to fight back. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai decided he needs to get out of Yerushalayim and go and talk to the general, Vespasian. Somehow he's got to get an audience with Vespasian to try to save a little bit, something, right? So, the whole story in the Gemara, it was hard for him to get out because these rebels were guarding the gates, they wouldn't let him out. So he had to fake his own death, and he had these Talmidim carry him out as if he was going to a funeral. They were taking him to his funeral because the cemetery was outside of the city limits and so on. Okay. Eventually he comes to Vespasian, and the whole story says he addresses him as the emperor, as the melech, as the king. And the king says to him, the Vespasian says to him, you are guilty, you're guilty of death, really, on two accounts. First of all, if I'm the king, where were you till now? Now you come? And second of all, I'm not the king. He was just a general, he wasn't the Caesar, he wasn't the king. And therefore it's an insult to the king, what you've done. While they were talking, a message came from Rome to tell them that the emperor died and he was appointed as an okay. So he says to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, what do you want? So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai asked him three requests. He didn't ask him to save Yerushalayim because he saw that it's not going to happen. Yerushalayim, unfortunately, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided Yerushalayim was going to fall. But he wanted to save Torah learning. This is a famous story. It's a very, very famous thing. It's a wonderful thing, actually. It's an amazing thing. So he said, give me at least the Sanhedrin, Yavne v'chachomel. Let the Sanhedrin move to Yavne, even before the destruction. And then he said he wanted to save the house of Rabbi Gamliel, because Rabbi Gamliel would be the head of the Sanhedrin. And he asked something else about Rabbi Tzadok, who was the elder sage at the time, that he'd been sick for very long. He wanted a doctor to heal him, whatever the case was. Okay. Essentially, he saved Torah learning, which is the secret to the eternity of the Jewish people. Right? So basically, it was destroyed, but at least Torah was going to thrive. Okay, so why am I saying this? Because when the Churban happened, when the destruction happened, on the day of Tisha B'Av, the Chachamim weren't there. They had left already. They were in Yavne. And the Gemara tells a story of one of the sages, who had a cow. And he had a neighbor who was a non-Jew, but a little bit of a psychic, it looks like. And they were in the afternoon, on Tisha B'Av afternoon, and the sage's cow let out a very big, I don't know how you say it, a moo. Like he mooed. He what? A bella, that's how you call it in English? Yeah. So the Arab, it says the Arabi calls him, not the Arabs like today, but it means like a native, a non-Jewish person. Turned to him and he says, your cow just bellowed, your Beis HaMikdash has just been destroyed. As soon as he said that, the cow let out a second bellow. To which the non-Jew responded and he said, that second bellow means Mashiach has just been born. Noilad Mashiach Shel Yisrael. Obviously it doesn't mean the person who's going to be Mashiach, because that would be very old by now. But it means the concept of Mashiach. In other words, at the highest point of Hashem's anger, when he let the Beis HaMikdash be destroyed, the seeds of redemption were already there. Which fits into what it says in Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch says one of the reasons that the Avelus, the morning relaxes on the afternoon, is because it says that the Gemara tells that actually Hashem did a tremendous kindness. Hashem was angry with us. He was not happy with how we were, and he poured his anger on stones instead of killing us. Right? So it fits in other words, the Am Yisrael is eternal. Hashem destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, but we are still here. And we are still here in a way where it's all going to come back, and the Geula will come. So that's another example where you see that the seeds of Geula, the whole idea of Geula, the theme of redemption, is not something from the future. It's something that began on Tisha B'Av. That's why it says Mashiach will come, Tisha B'Av will be a tremendous yontif, right? And Tisha B'Av is known as Mashiach's birthday. So, again, Tisha B'Av works on two levels. It works on two levels that, on the one hand, it is the day of the Churban, the destruction, day of pain, all the national tragedies, everything that happened to Klal Yisrael throughout the ages, all has to do with Tisha B'Av. I had this thought yesterday, I don't know if it's accurate or not, but even in regard to the current war, interesting thing. It might sound a bit political, but anyway, it's what it is. Because we know that the Spanish Inquisition was on Tisha B'Av. The fall of the Warsaw Ghetto was on Tisha B'Av, I think. Pretty sure. The breakout of the First World War, which ultimately led to the Second World War, broke on Tisha B'Av. The expulsion of the Jews from England happened on Tisha B'Av. Right? Did I say Spanish Inquisition? Yeah, that's it. So I was thinking about this current terrible Churban that we have, which is also part of Tisha B'Av. So actually, if you really think about it, didn't start on October the 7th, it started in 2025 with Gush Katif, with the disengagement, which people thought they would be a wonderful thing, but it's actually a terrible thing, right? When did that happen? So it actually happened on the 10th of Av, but it was supposed to happen on Tisha B'Av, and they responded at second day. So that's interesting. Also connected with Tisha B'Av. Anyway, I'm not sure if it's accurate or not, but I think it's something in that. Something in that. So, okay.
Sorry, Rabbi, is there a reason that it was Rabbi that told the sage?
Could be. I don't know, I'm not sure. I've never looked into it.
That, right?
Yeah, no, it must be a reason. Maybe because the idea of the Geula is that even the non-Jew will recognize that there's redemption ultimately. Okay. So these two layers of Tisha B'Av have to both be connected to. On the one hand, of course, we have to mourn the destruction, but at the same time, we have to be filled with hope. That Tisha B'Av is, even this year, Mr. Shem won't be a Tisha B'Av. We'll have Mashiach, it'll be Yontif, right? So in that context, I want to share with you a mimer that I learned. I learned it this week, actually. I'm going to show you part of the mimer. It's a mimer that the Rabbi said in Tafshil Amidallah, I think. Yeah, 1974. And it talks about the whole idea that through the Churban, through the Golus, and transforming the Golus and transforming the darkness into light, the light obviously will be a lot stronger than it was before, right? That's the same famous concept. Then, and dafka through the descent, dafka through going down, we come up much stronger, as we have this idea, the famous idea of Chassidus, of Yerido Tzorech Aliyah, that every descent is for the purpose of a greater ascent, right? And then in the Maimer, the Rebbe connects this with something that the Tzemach Tzedek says, and he applies it to a different pasuk in Eicha. So let me tell you what the Tzemach Tzedek says. On Tisha B'Av, we read Eicha, right? Eicha. Eicha was authored by the way, with Yirmiyahu Hanavi. It's a story of the destruction. Actually, it's a story of both destructions, even the first Beis Hamikdash and the second Beis Hamikdash, and the terrible things that happened there. But actually, it was not written historically. It was written prophetically. Right? Because Yirmiyahu Hanavi lived before the Churban. I mean, he was there by the Churban, but he gave it to one of the kings of Yehuda to warn the people, this is coming. Right? And he wrote Eicha, and everything it says in Eicha happened, unfortunately. It's written in the past tense, but actually it's not. It's written for the future. So it's full of pain, full of. If you read Eicha, it's like it's particularly particularly painful when it's like current, or was current. Still current, right? It's not finished yet. With all the nissim and everything, but it's still But the Torah is eternal. So the question Tzemach Tzedek sort of addresses, and other tzaddikim, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, Abaditchev, and so on, is like, so what's Eicha going to mean when Mashiach comes? Right? So he says that Eicha needs to be understood on two layers. There's a way to learn Eicha, not the simple pshat, but there's a way to read Eicha that it's all unbelievable. It's actually tremendous greatness. And the Tzemach Tzedek uses it and he explains the very first pasuk of Eicha. In fact, he explains the word Eicha. The word Eicha means, how could this be? Or alas, right? Because the Eicha starts with, Eicha Yoshva Badad. How could it be that you're talking about Yerushalayim? That it's sitting in isolation. Ha'ir Abbasiyam, the city that was so full of people, Hoysa Kalman has become like a widow. And so on, right? And Tzemach Tzedek takes that pasuk and he says, similar to what we learn about the curses in the Torah. Twice in the Torah, right, we have the Techacha, the curse that Moshe Rabbeinu gave to the Jewish people, the ones in B'chukoisai, in Vayikra, and the ones that we read just before Rosh Hashanah in Kisavai, the ones that Moshe Rabbeinu gave, which are even longer and stronger, right? And then the Mefarshim also say that really the Torah is really hidden blessings, and it's just cloaked in a cryptic way, and if you know how to read them and you know how to understand them, it's actually tremendous bracha, just so high that we can't really relate to, like we talked about in Netanya, can't relate to in a normal sort of understandable way, right? So the Tzemach Tzedek does the same thing with the first pasuk of Eicha, and he talks about the word of Eicha and how it refers to different layers of it, which we'll do now as well. Anyway, okay, so the Rebbe says, if that's the case, it must be in the whole Eicha. It's not only about the first pasuk, it must be the whole Eicha like that. And the Rebbe therefore takes another pasuk in Eicha and does the same thing, which we're going to learn now. Okay, because it will help us a little bit connect to the depth of Tisha B'Av, to what's behind the scenes in Tisha B'Av, which is not separate, by the way. The simple, just like by Tisha B'Av, what the superficial Tisha B'Av is like and what the real Tisha B'Av is like are not disconnected. They're two different things. The Geula that's embedded in Tisha B'Av will come from the Tisha B'Av, will come from the Geulus. The same thing with how we learn the pasuk. We'll see. Okay, so if you're on the page that I think I gave you, can I see the page I gave you? Does it have a paragraph base at the bottom? You've got to go to the front page.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, okay. We'll start from there, and we'll learn mainly the highlighted parts. Okay. It says the Rebbe like this. But keep the Chumash open. Keep the Chumash with you because we're going to look at the pasuk in a second. The Indians there, this idea, this concept we just said before, the Rebbe mentioned previously in the Maimer, that through the descent, you come to a greater elevation. Mudgish gamba pasuk. This can be emphasized also in the pasuk. The pasuk that is referring to is the second chapter of Eicha, the very first pasuk, where it says Eicha yo'iv be'apoy. I'll translate it in a minute. We'll look at it properly. Shem Megillas Eicha. Ubeheg them with the following introduction. Tehine yodua, it's known Mashakosav Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek wrote B'Rishi Moisev al Megillas Eicha in his notes on Eicha al Derech. He said it's similar to the concept that the Chumash, that the curses will be transformed to blessings. Similarly, we can say the same thing. We have to know how to read Eicha as an elevation, not as a destruction. And over there, the Tzemach Tzedek explains on the next page at length as psukim sheba Eicha Yoshva. How the first few psukim are really, the Malyusa, they really mean something beautiful, positive, and great. Says the Rebbe, this that Tzemach Tzedek says that the way I'm going to learn Eicha can be compared to the concept that we try and translate the curses of the psukim in the Chumash to blessing. Muvan, we can understand just like we say that the positive translation of the curses in the Torah, B'Sefer Vayikra in Vayikra and B'Sefer Dvarim, it's not only one or two of the psukim, it's Ubechol psukim sheba. It's in all of the psukim. The entire section of the curses in Vayikra and Dvarim must have a positive translation. Therefore, must say Keinu Gam B'Negel Megillas Eicha. You must say the same thing with Eicha. Who wrote Eicha? Shekasuv Yirmiyahu. Yirmiyahu wrote Eicha. Ubifrat, and especially the Mavur Kabbalah that it says in Kabbalah, Yirmiyahu Hayagilgul Nitzut Shal Moshe. Yirmiyahu was a reincarnation of the spark of Moshe Rabbeinu's neshama, which is why V'Lachein Shneim Nislav Eicha. That's why they both use the word Eicha. And if you know, but in this week's Parsha Dvarim, Moshe Rabbeinu is the first one to say Eicha. He said Eicha Esol Levadi. How can I carry all you? How can I bear to carry all you lot alone? Your quarrels, your burdensomes, all this kind of stuff, right? Therefore, since Yirmiyahu and Moshe are connected, therefore we must say Pirush Lamal Yusol Lo Rak Psuka Eicha Yoshua. Therefore, this at the Tzemach Tzedek positively translates the psukim at the beginning of Eicha in a positive way. It's not just the first psukim. Ela begam bepsukim de Eicha Yov. It's with this pasuk also. Ubechol Megillas Eicha. In fact, it's about the whole Megillah of Eicha. The whole Megillah. But this Shvirov says the same thing, and he also gives a few examples. But they were saying really there is a Eicha on a different level, which obviously will be the Eicha when Mashiach comes, right? But we have a glimpse of it now. So before we go further in the Maimer, take the Chumash and turn to page 1274. Where Eicha is printed. Yeah? 1274, 2 thirds down the page, the beginning of the second chapter. You see that? Where it says, Eicha Yo'iv Ba'apoy. Huh? Yeah. So it says the pasuk. You got it, Jonah? Yeah. Eicha, Yirmiyahu says, Eicha, how could it be, or alas, Yo'iv Ba'apoy Hashem Espatziyah. How could Hashem, Ba'apoy, with his anger, Yo'iv, you look in the English, it says clouded. How in his anger did he cloud? We'll see what that means. Esbas Tzion, the daughter of Tzion, meaning Hashem, Yerushalayim. Hishlich mishomayim eretz. He cast down from heaven to earth. Tiferes Yisrael, the glory of the Jewish people. V'lo yizochar hadoim raglov, and he does not remember his footstool, which I think is a reference to the Beis Hamikdash, b'yoim apoy, on the day of his anger. That's the possible way it's understood in the destruction. Now, it says like this. So go back to the Maimer. And so the way Yo'iv means to make dark. But it comes to the word Av. Av is one of the words used in the Chumash and Tanakh for a cloud. Right? There's a few different ways of seeing clouds in the Chumash. There's Anan, which is cloud, Arafel, which means a thick cloud. Ov also, Ov means like, the word Ov means thick. It means like a cloud when you can't see the sunlight, it makes it dark. So, right, so the Navi is saying, Eicha, how could it be? Alas, Yo'iv, Hashem made it dark. For the Rashi says, right? He says like this, but in he says, the Hine Rashi, Pirish, Yo'iv Ya'afil. Afela, the word, you have choshech, darkness, and afela is a thick darkness. Afela is a word in Hebrew, classical Hebrew. It means very bad darkness. So Rashi says, what does Yirmiyahu mean? How could you Yo'iv ba'apoy? That you made Yo'iv, a cloud? It means, how did you make it dark for us, right? Ta'at Omar, Kamoy Da'at Omar, like the Pasuk says, there's a Pasuk in Malachim and Tanakh, where there was a sudden very, very big rain or something. It says, Hashomayim hiskadru ba'ovim. The heaven suddenly became knotted up, like very darkened by thick clouds. Now, Tzemach Tzedek explains, so let's understand what this means. So let me give a bit of introduction outside. Tzemach Tzedek explains like this, that the world is created with 10 spheres, right? That's how Hashem created the world. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, and so on. Ultimately, however, the tool of creation was the lowest sphere, Malchus. Yeah? Malchus is like the feminine, it receives, we've talked about this many times, it receives what it is given, it processes it, and it gives birth, right? So Malchus has an interesting aspect to it. Like a king, the same thing. A king is able to relate to the nation. He takes the knowledge, the experience, the insight, the foresight, and he delivers it to the nation in ways that they can understand. The king himself is aloof, he's transcendent, he's higher, but he has that king, the leadership qualities to apply something. In other words, it's like we've talked about this many times, like this is the whole idea of Malchus, which is also feminine, the idea of femininity. right? Which is, sometimes I can have very intense feelings of chesed within me, or gvura, whatever the case is, and yet it doesn't get delivered because it's in me and it's not relatable to the outside, right? So the power of malchus, which is really a power of tzimtzum in a way, where you can break it up into different sections, like you can take it, make it relatable, right? So there's what we call malchus of kedusha. Hashem created the world even before the world was messed up, was full of klippah through the sins and everything, right? There is a malchus which is a malchus of kedusha, the malchus of atzilus, right? Which is still the process of tzimtzum, but it's a tzimtzum in order to deliver, it's not a tzimtzum in order to teach. It's like the Rav, right? It's like the person teaching Gemara. We've talked about this before, same idea. When the Rav teaches the Talmud, so obviously there's a process of tzimtzum, but there's also a revelation. The Talmud is learning Gemara. He's learning. So he's getting the revelation of the Rav. He's getting the revelation of the teacher, right? So even the very first day that the world was created, which is the world that says Al Milui Nira, it was a physical world. Yes, it was a limited, finite world, but it was a world of holiness, right? It was still created with Malchus, but more the Malchus of Kedusha. He says, let me just finish the introduction. There's also a concept, so what is Malchus? Malchus processes, makes it relatable, and then gives. Malchus of Kedusha gives Kedusha. Watered down Kedusha so we can relate to it, but it gives Kedusha. The teacher teaching the child Gemara is processing the Gemara to relate to the 5-year-old child, but he's teaching Gemara. Child is learning Torah. There is a concept of Malchus of Klippah, where Hashem created the forces of Klippah as we know, and Klippah also is a structure like everything else. Part of the structure of Klippah is having the Malchus of Klippah. In other words, it's the part of Klippah that feeds Klippah to everyone else and to everything else. When does that happen? What happens is, we know that Klippah, it doesn't say all this in the mind, but I'm just giving you the background. Klippah is created with a very minimal life dose. I think we learned this in Tanya. Klippah exists because we have to have free choice. The problem is that when we do things that are no good, when we do things that are against Hashem's will, or whatever the case is, or even just unholy stuff, we embolden the Klippah. The Klippah, what happens is we cause for the Kedusha flow to go via the Klippah. And then the Klippah emboldens. Right? And when Klippah emboldens, it gives a lot of Klippah. Right? Says Tzemach Tzedek, the third line in that Gimel, right, in the paragraph Gimel. Mavayat Tzemach Tzedek. Then when we talk about in Eicha, we complain, we cry that Hashem made it dark for the Jewish people. He clouded the Jewish people. What does that mean? Says Tzemach Tzedek, she'inyan ovim v'oifel, that cloud, that darkness that we're referring to, Yeshloimar, the Hainu Yorda Malchus de Kedusha, that the Malchus of Kedusha came down, lehashpia, to give a flow, but Malchus de Klippas Noiga, into the Malchus of Klippas Noiga, even though it's Klippas Noiga, but it's emboldened Malchus, it's emboldened Klippa. Meaning, that's what the Pasuk says, Eicha Yoiv. How could it have made it cloudy? Meaning, She Yorda Bastion. It says over there that the Bastion. It says, how did you make it so dark in your anger? Es Bastion, the daughter of Tzion. It refers to Yerushalayim, it refers to the Jewish people, but also it also refers to the Malchus of Kedusha. Bas, the daughter, is a feminine. It's Bas Tzion. The daughter of Tzion means the recipient of Tzion, which is Malchus of Kedusha. And we bemoaning the fact that Malchus Kedusha got entangled in the darkness. It descended into real darkness. What's real darkness? Klippah. Right? Ad she'eino yechela lalos, to the point that it seems impossible for it to be extracted. It's impossible to be elevated. Right? V'hu sholish klippas, and it goes even worse. It goes into the 3 complete badly klippas. Right? Shalamato ma klippas noiga, lower than klippas noiga even. So that's a simple shot to the pasuk. That's the Golus reading of the pasuk. It's the Golus reading of the pasuk. That's what happened. Right? Ach, im kol zeh, nevertheless, al yidei tshuva, with tshuva, yuchlo lalas, it can be elevated again. Mamshik, and he continues. V'aldeya tzedakah, that through tshuva, through tzedakah, all these things. It says, it's a pasuk in Yeshaya Hanovi. It says, "V'zorach b'choshech oyrecha." The pasuk says like this. It's a very interesting pasuk. It says, "Your light will shine in the darkness. V'afeiloscha, and your very deep darkness, katzaharoim, will be like the afternoon." Now we need to understand what that means. What does it mean? Your very dark, your thick darkness will be like the afternoon. If it's like the afternoon, it's not darkness. Right? What does that mean? So the simple meaning means like this. That very bad darkness that we talked about before. From that darkness will emerge an oir gadol. Valderech, similar to what we said before, or we always say, when darkness is transformed in a very big way, in a greater way, right? The light that comes from darkness is greater than light on its own. Then it says, listen to this, there's a pasuk in also Yeshaya Hanovi. It says like this, Mi'ele. Now, listen carefully to this pasuk. So we're gonna emerge from that darkness that can't happen at the destruction. We're gonna do tshuva. We're gonna be transformed, and we'll transform the darkness into light. And what are we gonna become like? There's a pasuk in Yeshaya Hanovi that says like this. It says, "Mi eile ka'ov tu'ufena." Who are these people? In a positive way, talking about the Eden, that floats like a cloud. Again, now that's all of a sudden a cloud just became a good thing for some reason, right? Chazal say in the Medrash that Zochu, if the Yidden will have the right schus, ma'alon u'meroimamon ka'ov, Hashem will elevate them and exalt them like a cloud. Shenem, like it says in that pasuk, mi'ela ka'ov lu'ufenu. Who are these people that are so great that they're like clouds, like floating clouds? Now, it's all mixed up, because just before we talked about Hashem creating a cloud, which means He made it so dark, the Malchus of Kedusha came down into Klippa, even bad Klippa, and we're all messed up. Now suddenly, we're going to do tshuva, we're going to transform the darkness into light, and going to become like what? Like a cloud. What does that mean? You understand the question? So we'll read in the words because it's very beautiful way he says it, but let me just give you something related to what we learned a while ago. We actually find in Tehillim and Chassidus explained very, very often that there's actually two types of clouds. And this is the point here. There's two types of cloud. Meaning there's two types of darkness essentially. There's one darkness, which is the cloud we talked about before, which is its sole function is to block revelation, to block light. There's light. The light has potential to be revealed. Maybe not all of it, maybe some of it, depends to who, depends when, and so on. Right? Some of that light is actually hidden from us because actually it's too high for us, but it's still light, its goal is still revelation. Right? And then there's another darkness, even higher than we spoke before about the hidden blessings. There's a higher darkness. In other words, last time I explained to you, there's a darkness that it's a light which is too high for us. So for us it's dark. But it's still light. In other words, it still can be revealed at some stage. There's a different darkness that it's called dark, not because it's concealed, but because it's transcendent. It's mysterious. It's Hashem Himself that Hashem Himself is not light. Light means, in other words, the real essence of Hashem. In Tehillim there's a passage that says, Yoshes Choshech Sisrei. Hashem places darkness as His dwelling place. What does that mean? when we talk about or in Chassidus, the light of Hashem, even at the highest level, it's not the essence of Hashem. It's something which Hashem is now revealed, something that eventually can be revealed. Yeah, we talk about the light that was there before the world was created. Obviously, it was not even possible to create a world. That's what had to be the famous Tzimtzum, where Hashem removed all his light and drew down a very thin light of light, whatever, all those things, Tzimtzum, all business. But once you say something's light, it means it's revealed. It's revealed, it's outside of Hashem. It's revealed to something else. Right? Even think about it in terms of a person. As much as of yourself that you can expose to someone else, it never is the real you. That's what it is. It's not your essence. You can't. If it's you, it means it's not revealable. Not because it's hidden, but because it's transcendent. It's too high for revelation. It has no connection to the outside world, the outside reality. Yeah? In fact, it's not even light. I don't know, it's not light, it's not darkness. It's the essence of Hashem who transcends light and darkness. It's not light, it's not dark, it's Him. Everything comes from Him. Light comes from Him, darkness comes from Him. What is Him? Not light, not darkness. Mystery, mysterious, Him. We call it darkness because it's not revealable. Yeah? Look how it says in the Maimer. 3 lines to the bottom. Moka Machar in his boy, in a different place, it's explained. Sheshtei bechinas of honor. There's 2 types of clouds. Ha'achas per klippa. The one cloud is in klippa. Moshe Kosev Mechaves Yecheskel. Like Yecheskel in his celestial vision, he describes a vision of Hashem's chariot and everything, but he also describes the klippa. In fact, the source of knowing that there's 4 types of klippas, 3 very bad ones and 1 neutral one, comes from Yecheskel. And he says, Ruach Sa'ora Bomen Atzofa and Asir, unbelievable wind coming from the north, Onon Godel, a big cloud, and he uses 3 expressions of cloud there, and it's the 3 impure klippas. That's the one type of cloud. But there's a second cloud. The second one is a holy cloud. It's so high to the point where it says, for example, it says, it says there was a pasuk that says that when the Mishkan was built, Moshe Rabbeinu was unable to approach the Mishkan kishochan olav ha'anon, because the cloud was there. So why couldn't he approach it? If it was just hiddenness, just concealment, if it was a blockage of Hashem, that's all it was. Moshe Rabbeinu can penetrate that? No, he couldn't do that because the greater cloud was there. He couldn't engage with that. Or a different way we find by Matan Torah, where Hashem Mamash let Moshe Rabbeinu in the inner chambers. It says Moshe Nigash El Ha'arofel. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he went up the mountain of Har Sinai, what was there? An Arofel, a very thick cloud. And Moshe Rabbeinu went into that cloud. Because that was... No, it was. It wasn't Klippa. Because that we'll see. At Matan Torah, there was an exposure to the essence of Hashem in a temporary way. Shari Indian Zeh Moshe Nigal El Arafle Matan Torah Shayos Gilui Nali Yosef Lechem Yisrael was an unbelievable revelation to all the Yidden, and nevertheless only Moshe Rabbeinu because Mokim Gavos Rak Moshe Nigal Shal Arafel. Only Moshe Rabbeinu was able to go to the Arafel, to the cloud, not because he was lower, because he was higher. Moshe Rabbeinu was kind of let in to the Arafel. Al derech zeh says that's the pshat. In other words, so what's the Arafel? Matan Torah, when the Yidden stood at Matan Torah, they got the most unbelievable revelation that never was and never will be until Mashiach comes. And nevertheless, there was something higher than Matan Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu went into the Arafel, the cloud. The mystique of Hashem. Not the revelation of Hashem. What's higher than the revelation? I don't know you can't use the word revealed because it's not revealed. It's connected to. He connected to, in a very conscious way, the mystery of Hashem. That kind of darkness. Right? When Mashiach will come, al derech zeh, the Bechina is Eicha Yo'iv. That's the pasuk. Eicha is wow. Yo'iv, Hashem is going to put a cloud on the Eden. When Mashiach comes, Hu na le yoyser gam me'agilui shel chol Yisrael b'shas matan Torah. We will get, Mashiach comes, we will get the revelation of Moshe Rabbeinu got at Matan Torah. We didn't get it. The cloud, the arofel, the the thickness, the mystique, the mystery of Hashem. And that's why Pasuk in Yeshayahu HaNavi says that Hashem will say to, the Navi says, wow, mi eile ka'ov tu'efena, who are these people that are floating like clouds? Not clipper, not darkness, higher level, but higher than light. That's why it's called darkness.
So it precedes creation.
It's the essence of Hashem. Now also, I'm here. Okay. And that pasuk says the Rebbe, when Yeshayahu was like wondering about this, right? About how, like, who are these people floating like clouds? I'll tell you this outside because we're going to run out of time soon. Right? He says, Mi Eile, who are these people? He says that the words mi and Eile is very, very, very exact. What is mi? Mi means who. Mi is like a mystery sort of mi. So remember once in Tanya I explained to you there's what we call the hidden worlds and the revealed worlds. Right? Even now, even in the process of Gilui, there's these hidden worlds and which are also somewhat dark to us, but they're not essentially dark, right? But it's the spiritual worlds, the world of Bria, for example, right? Which in davening is called darkness because it's higher than us. Yeah. So the world of Bria is called darkness. Why? But it's like me. Me is the hidden worlds that we can't even relate to. It's too high for us. Then there's Eila. Eila means these. These means something you know. Eila refers to the real worlds. Mashiach will come. Is going to be a combination. They're going to merge. The hidden worlds and the revealed worlds will come together. How can that be? The one is unlimited and infinite, the one is finite. How are the two things going to come together? Because there will be an exposure to the ultimate cloud. The ultimate cloud is the transcendent part of Hashem. In other words, the essence of Hashem that is higher than both hidden and revealed, higher than darkness and light. There will be such an exposure that we'll be flying on the cloud, the ultimate thickness of the cloud. That's why we'll be able to bring together the world of Bria and the world of Asiyah, the hidden, all come together. All be one. Coming from the power of that which is greater than both of them, which is the ultimate cloud, the ultimate darkness, but not darkness because it's dark, or not because it can't relate to people. It's ultimate darkness because it's defined as darkness, because it transcends both light and darkness. We don't know what it is. It's the mystique of Hashem. And he says, therefore, the pasuk here in Eicha, that's what's going to happen. Yo'iv means he says going to be a cloud, right? So what's going to do with the word Eicha? Eicha means alas. But not always. It means alas, or how could it be, like astounded, like befuddled. How could it be, right? It's like a cry. How could this happen? That's on the Golus interpretation of Eicha. But in the Geula interpretation of Eicha means something completely different. First of all, Eicha is an amazement, like wow. And as the Tzedek explains like this, I'm gonna Eicha actually is a word which symbolizes the revelation on all levels. Because the Samach Tzedek explains like this, that the Yud, Eicha is Aleph, Yud, Chafei. Right? The Yud refers to the Aseres HaDibros. Right? Which is the revelation of Matan Torah. 10 Dibros is the Matan Torah. The highest revelation we've had till now. Chafei, in Chassidus, Chafei, which is an expression of lack of clarity, refers to Malchus. Refers to Tzimtzum, essentially. A little bit like the hidden worlds and the revealed worlds, right? So 10 spheres is like what 10 commandments was like revealed by Matan Torah, which comes together with the 10 spheres and so on. Koi is when it's a little bit hidden. It's like this world. In other words, it's the world is created through Malchus, which is a bit of a hidden world, right? What's going to happen when Mashiach comes? The hidden worlds, just like by the splitting of the sea, says the same thing. That was all temporary. When the sea split also, what's the idea of sea splitting? It says that the sea represents the hidden worlds because you can't see the world underneath the water. Dry land represents the dry land, the revealed worlds. Splitting of the sea means that the hidden worlds came together with the revealed worlds, right? Mashiach will come. That's to be the constant state of being. Whatever is hidden from us now will be revealed, but not revealed. Not that we have to exit this existence to go find it somewhere. Being people, remaining physical people, remaining in the world of Chaf Hey, in the world of Malchus, we will see the revelation will be the joining together of the infinite with the finite, right? Why? Because it starts with the Aleph of Eicha. The Aleph is that cloud, the one Hashem. The Anoichi Hashem Alekecha, the ultimate darkness, the ultimate cloud. Yeah? Have a look what he says at the bottom. Have a look at the bottom of this page. It says, the Aleph Shelifnei HaYud, which is before the Yud. The Mailim, and therefore higher than the Yud on the next page. Moiral Bechinas. So the Mailim Esesfiris. It